Welcome to Modern Mind, Ancient Book, where we are going back to move forward. We're finding a love for the law, the prophets, and the writings. We want to welcome you to a bonus episode. If you'd like to reach out to us, please feel free. modernmindancientbook@gmail.com. My name is Roger, your host. Today we have Nick, welcome.
Glad to be here.
And Pastor Pete, sir, how are you?
Hello, good evening, shalom.
So, I don't know if I've heard another podcaster necessarily do this subject, and it's going to be the Intertestamental Period.
Right.
Which is, I think, a black spot for most people, right? Unless you're Jewish, or maybe Greek or Iranian, you probably don't know this history. But it's like a super important part of what Israel was and became just prior to and during the time of Jesus's incarnation, right? So, last book in our Bible, Malachi, was about 400 BC. So what happened? Right? What happened? A whole bunch of stuff happened, you know? Like, there's 400 years there where tons of things happened, specifically to that nation.
And they changed from basically a Mesopotamian world to a Roman world.
Yeah,
in that
when
400
Jesus
years.
was there, right?
Yeah.
And so, and I bet you most Christians can't answer this question. How did Israel have the right to have their own religion and not be subject to Roman religious practice? Well, we're going to answer that today.
Good, because I'm not confident in answering that.
Yeah.
But it's a very important thing.
Right.
How did that happen? How did Jewish people get their own special little carve out in a world where everybody else had to practice the same as the Romans, right? It matters.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's start at the beginning. So, 400 BC, Israel is now this little nation, sort of freed, but they're a vassal state to Persia, right?
Right.
So you had Cyrus, Darius, Xerxes, Artaxerxes.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, I tell people what a vassal state is, Roger, that they
Yeah.
were paying tribute.
Yep, we did
Somebody
that.
was watching what they were deciding. They didn't have total control.
Absolutely. Yep. So we did this. Assyria, many, like 1,000 years before this, created a thing called a suzerain treaty. The suzerain was the administrator of the treaty. They were the powerful one. And the vassal was the state that would pay tribute to the suzerain.
Right.
The suzerain could enter contract with whoever and whenever, but the vassal state could not. They only had one suzerain. They had to be totally loyal to in this case, the power that was over them. Well, the Persians carried on this, right? Cyrus actually fell in love with, after he conquered the Babylonians, he fell in love with the Babylonian way, right? Loved it, worshiped Marduk, all that stuff. And so they adopted the Mesopotamian way. They adopted the scribes, the religious practices. The ancient way was extremely alluring. And we're going to find out it's even more alluring than we realize, because there's a whole story about that's going to develop here momentarily. So now the Persians, they made an error, because the Greeks had begun to develop a great civilization. Think Aristotle, think Greek philosophy, sculpturing, all this stuff. About 500 BC this started, right? The Persians reigned for 200 years. During the time of Xerxes, he tried to destroy or take over the Greeks, right? And that was about that like 450, 460, whatever BC thing, right? So they're like getting even more reason to come together. And so you had the Spartans, which were a warrior nation. Then you had the Athenians. Well, they ended up destroying the Persian navy, and they just the Persians just couldn't overcome the Greeks, right? They just couldn't take that land. Well, they retreated. When they retreated, they burned all sorts of very important religious places to them. So the Greeks never forgot that. So the Persians are there. They're ruling the biggest swath of land that any nation or any power has ever run. But the Greeks, they were becoming a power. Now, who rose from that area? Alexander the Great. Right? 332 BC. Wasn't Greek, Macedonian.
Right. That's right.
Yep. So he created the phalanx. They had these spears that were 18 foot long, and they would run a column 17 columns deep, and the last spear would be next to the shoulder of the first soldier, and all the other spears, as they extended, would hold up this 18 foot long wall of spearheads that you just couldn't get past. They were vulnerable on the flanks, but then they put hoplites there, right? Soldiers who could fight, and they had 8 foot pikes. Very formidable force, new technology. Okay, so Alexander's father, Philip, wanted to avenge what the Persians had done. He was murdered, assassinated, the night before they were going to kick off the war. Now Alexander the Great comes to power. To the Persians, he was Alexander the Cursed. He was 20 years old when he came to power, and just an absolute animal. So he marches his people, right? He had cavalry, the phalanx, spear, like kind of hoplites, right? He had javelin throwers, and he had archers, right? And so he would organize his soldiers with the phalanx in the middle, and the javelin throwers, and the archers, and the cavalry on the right and left flank, right? But he was very impatient. So the first time they went to war against the Persians lined up, and Alexander just charged from the right flank, right? They didn't know what to do. He ended up routing them because they just couldn't respond to this violence, right? And that's the way all of his battles went. That guy was fearless. He led his people into battle, every single battle. And he was always on the right side with the javelin throwers and the archers and the cavalry. And he never held back, ever. He was always the first one in. It didn't matter. So, extremely successful. Went all the way through, sacked Babylon, where the Persians had set up their capital, essentially, right? He went all the way to India, into Pakistan, where he couldn't overcome them because they had elephants and stuff, right? So he made some treaties, got some elephants, came back to Babylon, and there, well, there's a couple things in this. Let me just back up just a tiny bit. When he went into northern Egypt, he was crowned pharaoh. He was called a god-man. But he's Greek. They don't believe in that. His generals and things didn't take it too serious, right? But Alexander did. He was
going to go to his head a little bit.
Yeah.
Going to his head a little bit, right? So, these are the people of reason. He was trained by Aristotle, right? Philosophy, and so he goes. So he takes that idea, right? And they rename some stuff, like you get like Heliopolis. That's a Greek name. Right. That was the city of Ra, right? The sun is Helio, this kind of thing. Alexandria, right? Yeah. All this stuff. Now there were 60 Alexandrias. Only one of them remember.
Right.
So he gets all the way to India. His army revolts. They say, nope, we're not doing this anymore. It's been 8 years. We want to go back home. There's armies over here. These people are weird. We're not doing this anymore. We're done. So they stop. He goes back to Babylon, and he sets up his kingdom there. He marries Roxanne, who was a Persian woman, gets pregnant, then he dies. Baby's born. There was in the absence of power, there's a vacuum. Right? So when he died, all of the generals were like, no, this ain't. I want power. I want some land. So the two that we're going to focus on are Ptolemaeus and Seleucid. So the Seleucid, he went like the northern part, think like Syria, Damascus area, and Ptolemaeus,
Lebanon and that area.
yep, he went to Egypt. Ptolemaeus was smart. He went down there. He didn't expect the Egyptians to be Greek. Instead, he let the Egyptians be who they were and worship the way they wanted to. And he basically farmed gold and all kinds of stuff out of there, right? Now, after Alexander died, his golden sarcophagus was being taken back to Macedonia. But see, Ptolemaeus had Alexandria. He wanted that place to be famous. So he stole the body and the sarcophagus from the funeral procession and took it to Alexandria, where he created a funeral thing, right? Like a whole dedication, monument, right? And that's where Alexander's sarcophagus and body stayed. And then you have, you know, the great library of Alexandria, right? So the Ptolemies were a unique, he managed to solidify power. So in the absence of Alexander, there was lots of problems, but the Ptolemies and the Seleucids, they managed to solidify and hold on to power. At this very same time, Rome was also beginning to be a power. At this very same time, the Greeks were not super happy with what was going on because Alexander had started dressing like Babylonians. Remember what I was saying about Babylon being alluring, this ancient way? Well, that's kind of what probably got him murdered. Nobody knows how Alexander died, but he was probably poisoned or something, right? He started having his generals bow to him and stuff. So he got real drunk on that God-man idea. Go back to the Nephilim, right? This is an ancient idea of men who were divine, right? The men of old, the great men, the conquerors. Because he was a conqueror, he took that ancient idea and began to identify and become it, which was something else that the Romans did later, right? It's a continuing motif also in humanity, right? So Alexander's gone, the Ptolemies now have power, and the Seleucids now have power. Well, what's between Egypt and Syria?
Israel,
right? Now, when they came back, though, from captivity, they didn't call themselves Israel anymore. They called themselves the Hasmoneans. So now you have this kind of like Judah thing, which is where the temple was, and they were kind of Israel, right? And then you have, the Seleucids and the Ptolemies kind of just like skirmishing in this general area for this power. So they're still a vassal state, right? And they had taken on corrupt priests, which is part of the reason why Hanukkah happens, right? So you get this guy, Joshua. He's made high priest. He takes a Greek name, Jason, and he puts gymnasiums in Israel. And he starts allowing the worship of Zeus in Israel. But he wasn't quite Greek enough. So Antiochus puts another high priest in, and the name is eluding me right now. But while he's away defending himself against the Seleucids, or the Ptolemies, I think it was the Ptolemies, it was the Seleucids that did that. Well, Jason deposes the high priest. So now Antiochus comes back, and he's very angry. And that's when the pig was offered on the altar, and the temple just totally.
That was it.
Yeah,
That was
there was a problem, right? Zeus is set up. Now the Greek rulers come down hard on the Hasmoneans. Mattathias and his sons are in the country. They're not in the city. Well, a Greek representative came and said, "Hey, all you guys got to do is offer a pig and bow down to a statue of Zeus." And Mattathias kills him. And then they flee into the wilderness. And 600 soldiers come with them. And they battle. Now, the first battle, there's 600. David had 600, right? They kill a general, They take his sword, Goliath's sword, right?
Right.
You know? They call themselves the Macabre, which is an Aramaic word for hammer. So they become the Maccabees, right? The hammers, you know? And they engage in what's it called? Guerrilla warfare. They won't fight on flat ground because they can't. These Greek armies are just way too. You can't overcome a phalanx with 600 soldiers, right? And I think the most they ever had were like 10 or 30,000 soldiers at their height. The thing is they were so good at guerrilla warfare, they kept winning battle after battle after battle after battle, until eventually they took back Jerusalem. And then is the birth of the Hasmonean Empire. So you have the Maccabees ruling, right? So Mattathias dies, Judah Maccabees, his son, becomes, the guerrilla warfare guy. They win battle after battle after battle until finally they take back Jerusalem. They rededicate the temple. The oil lasts 8 days instead of 1, because you have to have a specifically formulated and sanctified oil, right? It's not just olive oil.
No.
It has to be a mixture of the right stuff.
Right.
It's actually in the law that
How to
this
make it.
oil has to be made this way.
Right.
But they only had 1 day. The last 8. So, again, we see a group of people that didn't have a temple. They weren't practicing the Judaism of prior Israel, of Moses, really, right? And it's to me, this is just mind-blowing. I love this part of the Bible, how Abraham didn't practice Judaism at all. He worshipped at trees and at altars and on top of mountains and
stones and pouring oil.
there's all kinds of stuff, right? Same thing with Isaac and Jacob, and then they obviously weren't practicing Judaism in in Egypt for 400 years. Then they come out, they get a tabernacle and what we call the law, the wisdom of Moses, how to rule and become a nation. And this just kind of dawned on me the other day, because we were talking about like making some Indian food.
Right.
So you take a goat and you cut its meat off. And how do most Indian people eat their food?
I don't know.
Meat in yogurt. What is yogurt? It's the mother's
milk.
milk,
Yeah. Okay.
right? So,
I didn't know if you were talking about utensils or something.
Yeah.
How do they eat the food?
with bread,
With the bread, with fingers and bread, and
So it's just you see how the cultural overlap thing like is there, like it's like don't be polytheistic like these people, because what's the draw? That food is really good, man.
Yeah.
But it's meat and it's mother's milk, so you can't have that food, right? Don't do what those people do. Don't be like those people. Don't be tainted by that, because the food and the women and the
the status,
Right.
the allure of the ancient religions, and the God man.
Yeah, and the allure of new things and interesting things, right? I love Indian food, So that's the thing, and that's what the wisdom of the Torah is, right? So it's just about keeping separate. So they had a tabernacle, worshipped at the tabernacle. You had this; it's called the Mishkan, right? And you get the kavod, or the presence of God that comes down in that place. Moses used to go meet with God, but now he can't go meet with God. It has to be Aaron, right? So this religion is this constantly evolving thing. And so then you get the temple. Now, by the time we get to this intertestamental period, none of that stuff is happening. But the temple's being reconstituted. God is blessing the temple, because that's the last thing he gave. That's the thing he gave. Right. And so he does that, and Jesus celebrated Hanukkah. Right? So that's how it happened. The Greeks were especially brutal to the Jewish people when they turned bad on them. Especially brutal. So Antiochus, there's stories. One of the stories is an old man is brought before Antiochus, and he says, "Don't wither your gray hair. Don't worry your head. Don't bring yourself down for no reason. I am your friend. Just bow yourself to Zeus and eat some pig meat." and you're going to be fine, old man. I'll make you great in the kingdom. And the man says, far be it from me to do such a thing. I've been Jewish all my life. Why would I end my life not pleasing to God? So he does horrible things to that old man. Murders him. But not in a kind. He was not his friend. Following that, they bring in youth. 7 kids in front of their mother. 7 young boys. From, let's say, young adult to small, like 5-7-year-old, right? And Antiochus says, Mom, don't bring your children to the grave in this way. I'm your friend. I'll make you great in the kingdom. Have them eat the pig meat.
Right.
Have them bow to Zeus. You just walk out of here with a mouthful of meat. No big deal.
Right.
And Mama says, far be it from me to allow my children to curse God. We will never turn against God. And so the young boy does the same thing. He says, brothers, be like me, follow me.
Right.
Kills him. Next brother, next brother, next brother, next brother. Kills the mom. Baby's left. Baby says, my brothers all went the same way. As for me, I'll be with God, but you won't be. Right? That's that. You know? Now it's in the Mishnahs. Who knows if it's a real story? Probably is. I don't know. But it's there, right? So you have these stories, you have these things, and the nations around Israel saw this unfair treatment, this brutality. So Antiochus was called Epiphanes, God with us. That was the name he took. To his people, to the Greeks, he was called Epimanes, or madman, right? He was Antiochus the madman. So the Greeks saw this and they didn't like it. It's brutality, it's not okay. Nobody needs to rule that way, and nobody needs to be ruled that way. The Romans saw this, and they, instead of turning against or turning a blind eye, they made a deal with the Hasmonean people.
Right.
And they said, well, you can worship how you would like. You are exempted. Now, carry on, be faithful, right? As long as you're good to us, we saw what happened to you, just be our vassal state. And so that's how it carried on. The Hasmoneans, well, they subdued the Idumeans and forcefully converted them to Judaism. Now, the Romans got busy in a war, and the Hasmoneans turned against them. So when they came back, they crushed the Hasmoneans. Now this is after Maccabees, right? And then they put the Idumeans as the power place. And that's where we find Herod in Idumea. Right? So that's how this story came to be, right? Now, the Idumeans were kind of Judaism, you know? They more aligned with the Sadducees. There's these religious sects too that came up during these times.
Right.
The Pharisees were very, very religious. And they believed in angels and just lots and lots of spiritual things and stuff, right? They had also, but the dividing point was the oral law. That God gave Moses something that wasn't written. The Sadducees said, nope, God didn't give anybody anything that's not written. It's written, that's what it is. And so, the Hasmoneans more closely identified with the Sadducees. The Idumeans more closely identified with the Pharisees and the Sadducees at times. It was kind of an ebb and flow for both of them. Right. But at the point that Jesus comes, the Sadducees are the more powerful version, right, in the Knesset, or the like power broker point, kind of like the Supreme Court at the time, right? And so that's what Jesus came into. He came into a place that because of great suffering, they were allowed to practice their religious practices. You can see God's hand even through the suffering in it, right? And even through a point where there were no more prophets.
Right.
During that point, no prophet spoke. But all of these things transpired. And, Alexander is a point of prophecy. And everything that happened after it. It was spoken to before it happened. Then it happened. And then the people were given favored treatment. And that's what Jesus came into. And that's why Christianity was allowed to thrive. Without that, it would have been crushed, boom, right at the gate, instantly. Because it's not welcome. It's not Roman. But Judaism was allowed to have its own way, and Christianity was seen as the sect of the Nazarenes, right? You had 4 different sects before Jesus. You had the, and they're not actually called it. For some reason, the name is not there right now. But the Essenes, the Sadducees, the Pharisees, and then the Zealots, which were kind of not okay, right? Because they were killing people.
Simon.
Yeah.
Yes, Simon.
But you had to find those ones. Otherwise, it was allowed to be. After Jesus' death and resurrection, we believe, right? Then you have the sect of the Nazarenes, 5 sects. That's not 40,000.
Right.
Just saying.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Point taken.
So, you know, the church was allowed to thrive through all of this suffering and all this difficulty and all through this mistreatment. Now, Jewish people, this is another point that really has to be made. Jewish people are not weak people.
No.
They are not weak people.
To endure everything that they did and still come out
still,
existing on the
and
other
still
side.
endure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and still enduring to this day. The Jewish people are a warrior nation.
Yeah.
And it's right from the beginning, right? What was Pharaoh's problem with the people in Goshen?
Become too powerful.
Yeah, that they would overcome me, right?
Yep.
And then they go out, they spend 40 years in the wilderness, and they take land by force, right? Then, following that, they become a problematic nation to all of the superpowers.
Right.
Gigantic superpowers. Because they're a warrior nation.
Right.
Because they're hardy people, strong people, an aggressive people, crafty people. Yeah, guerrilla warfare people. You know? And just... I really want that to be understood so that, you know, Christians in general, and then just Jewish people can take pride in that, right? It's a good thing to never give up, to be audacious, to be hard, a hard fighting group, right? Because the world around you will step on you otherwise, and they are the image of that. But they never gave up, and they never gave in, and they're still here. And we as Christians, well, we need to respect that. And we need to give the honor where the honor's due. Jesus is not that soft either. He's a Jew, right? He was born into that culture. The idea for him to be the Messiah was to be the one like Judah Maccab, the hammer, who led the people to overcome Rome. That's one of the Messianic figures.
Right.
Both are the same. You have the Jewish suffering servant of Joseph, right? Son Ben Yosef. And then you have Ben Huda, right? The conquering one, the son of Judah, right? So, or the son of David. So, you have these. It's almost hard to explain, because you have a people who are supposed to be humble and contrite and broken before God, and good, kind, compassionate, caring, never move the boundary of your neighbor, take care of the stranger, love your enemies. And then you have a group of people who are supposed to overcome all opposition to the King of Kings and Lord of Lords under violence. They were supposed to take the land and destroy everything in it.
That sounds a lot like David.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was an odd mixture of both.
Yeah.
Right.
A man after God's own heart, it says.
Yep.
So, yeah, that character study, you're not wrong. That's the character study. So this intertestamental period very much sees the David motif play out again.
Mm-hmm.
Only this time it's with Judah Maccabee, right? Judah the hammer. And so, yeah, the Hasmoneans fell, the Idumeans took power. Jesus was born. The Idumeans were just like the Greeks. They were going to destroy the firstborn, just like Pharaoh. All these motifs play over and over and over again in history, man. Yeah. And I just love these stories. I think that the intertestamental period, we needed to do it.
Right.
You know, and this is why. So, you know, if you're listening and you kind of want to get a better idea of what Hanukkah is, because I kind of just glossed over it, then, you know, we'll look up Hanukkah, obviously. But then on the other side of that, you can read 1st and 2nd Maccabees. Great books, worth a read. Not included in our canon. In other canons, yes. All literature is wisdom literature in my mind. Right? So, can you read books about evolution? Yes, please. Can you read books about, I don't know, other deities? Yeah, please do it. Right? If you're convinced by that, hey, what am I to say? Right? I'd never be convinced by it, but that's you.
Right.
I'm not saying go to the tree of knowledge of good and evil. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying, don't be afraid to read the epigraphal, pseudo-epigraphal stuff. Be a good Bible student, right? And part of it is what we just talked about, this intertestamental period where you have 1st and 2nd Maccabees. Enoch is one of them. Esdras, right? So, there's a whole bunch of stuff in here, like Joseph and the woman, right? There's a whole other book in there, you know?
And more about Daniel.
Yeah, and more about Daniel. Yeah, I mean, there's just a whole bunch of stuff. So you can examine the past and the present. You can look at whatever you want to, but be the sort of person who goes to God and is thankful for every day. That's the point, right? So, do you guys have anything else to add?
No. You did a great job, man.
Yeah, great job, Roger.
Thanks. I just thank God for the will and desire to be excited.
Some people might just want to think where Masada fits in, because that's kind of the one point a lot of Christians know about.
Yeah, Masada.
The Intertestamental.
Well, tell the story.
Masada, they made a last stand at Masada, and when they were going to be conquered, they committed suicide.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, prideful people.
Right.
Not a super positive point.
Yeah.
In the history of Israel. However, what it shows is the unconquered mind, right?
Right.
They were
taking it all the way.
They were going all the way. Yeah, we will never be like you.
Right.
Yeah. And Christians have a lot to learn about that. The early Christians were forced into that position too.
Right. And some are we're soft, but there are Christians who are living out that lesson.
Right.
Today.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was
So, I mean,
there was a horrible massacre in Syria. Actually, there's quite a Christian population in Syria, and they're in big trouble right now because it's being taken over by Islamists. I mean, American Christians have a lot.
Yeah.
So, here we are today. We did the Intertestamental Period. If you have any questions, you'd just like to reach out to us, we sure would appreciate it. modernmindancientbook@gmail.com. If you're listening to this on Facebook or any other medium, we're on everything. Please subscribe. Please like. Please
comment and share.
And share. Yeah,
we'd love some feedback.
Yeah, and send this stuff to people who you think would be interested. We're doing this for free. We don't want anything. We're not asking you for money. There's no Patreon. We're not in this for anything other than to share our conversations with you. So we just want to thank you for being here. We'll see you next time.